Frost pressed himself against the cold metal wall of the creature yard, watching the other bonded animals receive their evening meals. His stomach twisted with hunger, but he refused to beg. The crimson drake, 3 pins over-tore into a haunch of fresh meat, while its cadet partner stroked its scales and praised it. The silver serpent coiled around its handler got hand-fed exotic fruits that smelled sweet even from this distance. Frost got a single nutrition block dropped into his feeding trough twice a day, and only because Academy regulations required it. The white dragon was small for his age, just barely past his juvenile molt. His scales should have gleamed like polished bone, but malnutrition had dulled them to the color of dirty snow. Every rib showed through his sides. His wings, folded tight against his back, trembled slightly from weakness. The other creatures ignored him. Their cadet partners did worse than ignore him. They pointed and laughed. "Look at the ghost dragon," one cadet said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Still hasn't eaten his morning block. Guess even he knows he's not worth the resources." Brennan, a muscular human cadet with perfectly pressed uniform, walked past Frost's pen with his bonded drake. The crimson creature was twice Frost's size, well-fed and arrogant. "My grandfather used to say albino drakes were bad omens on my homeworld. They'd call them birth. Academy's too soft, keeping this one around." The other cadets laughed. Frost kept his pale eyes fixed on the far wall, refusing to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. He had learned early that showing weakness only made the mockery worse. Inside, though, something cracked a little more. He had been at this academy for 4 months. 4 months of scraps and insults. 4 months of watching other creatures bond with cadets while he remained alone. Instructor Halvine, a tall Valtorian with blue-gray skin and strict posture, walked through the feeding area doing evening checks. He stopped briefly at Frost's pen, looked at the uneaten nutrition block, and made a note on his datapad. "Creature continues to refuse adequate nutrition," he muttered. "Recommend reducing rations to avoid waste." Frost's tail twitched. The nutrition blocks tasted like chalk and metal. They provided bare minimum sustenance, but nothing else. He was hungry enough to eat them, but the indignity of it made him wait until no one was watching. He had pride, even if he had nothing else. The instructor moved on without another glance. To Halvine, Frost was a failed experiment. The Academy had accepted him as a hatchling, hoping to prove that albino drakes could bond despite cultural prejudice. But no cadet wanted him. His coloring was wrong. His size was wrong. The whispers said he was defective, cursed, worthless. After 4 months, even the instructors believed it. Sunset painted the sky purple and orange beyond the energy barriers of the yard. One by one, cadets led their bonded creatures to the interior halls where comfortable sleeping quarters waited. Frost would spend another night on the cold ground of his pen, alone. He curled into a tight ball, tucking his snout under one wing, and tried to ignore the gnawing emptiness in his belly. The yard grew quiet. Only the hum of the barrier and distant sounds of the academy remained. Frost had almost drifted into uneasy sleep when he heard light footsteps approaching. He cracked one eye open, expecting a maintenance worker or perhaps another cruel cadet looking for entertainment. Instead, he saw a small human child standing outside his pen. She was tiny, even for a human. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple tie, and her academy jumpsuit hung loose on her thin frame. She looked young, far younger than the usual cadets. Her eyes were dark and serious as she stared at him through the barrier. Frost stared back, uncertain. He had learned to distrust anyone who approached his pen. Usually they came to mock or throw things. But this child just stood there, looking at him with an expression he could not quite read. Not disgust, not amusement, something else. The girl glanced around to make sure no one was watching, then moved closer to the barrier controls. She seemed to be studying him carefully, taking in his thin frame and dull scales. Frost tensed, ready to retreat further into his corner if needed. But she made no threatening moves. She just looked at him with those serious eyes, and then, to his surprise, she sat down on the ground outside his pen. They stayed like that for several long minutes, girl and dragon, just looking at each other across the barrier. Finally, the girl spoke in a soft voice. "You're hungry, aren't you?" Frost did not respond. He could not speak human languages, and she probably could not understand Drake vocalizations. But something in her tone made his ear ridges lift slightly. She was not mocking him. She sounded concerned. The girl stood up slowly, still watching him. "I'll come back," she said. "I promise." Then she turned and walked away into the growing darkness, leaving Frost alone again. But for the first time in months, something stirred in his chest besides hunger and loneliness. It felt almost like hope, though he was afraid to name it. He had been disappointed too many times before. Frost finally dragged himself to his feeding trough and choked down the stale nutrition block. He needed his strength. Something told him that the small human girl would indeed return, and when she did, he wanted to be alert enough to understand why. Riley Chun had never been good at fitting in. At 10 years old, she was the youngest cadet in the junior program by 2 full years. Her test scores had been high enough to earn early admission, but her physical scores were terrible. She was small, weak, and worst of all, quiet. The other cadets treated her like she was invisible. She sat alone in the cafeteria, picking at her dinner while conversations and laughter swirled around her. Nobody saved her a seat. Nobody asked about her day. She had grown up on a farming colony where everyone knew everyone, where her parents raised livestock and she had bottle-fed baby animals since she could walk. Here at the academy, surrounded by hundreds of people, she had never felt more alone, until she saw the white dragon. She had spotted him during orientation week, huddled in the corner of the creature yards while instructors showed them the bonded animal facilities. Everyone else had been excited about the impressive beasts on display. Riley had only noticed the thin, albino Drake trying to make himself invisible. Something about the way he held himself, proud despite obvious neglect, had made her heart ache. Now, 3 days after that first evening visit, Riley worked in the cadet kitchen during the quiet hours after dinner. She had permission to be here. Junior cadets were encouraged to learn basic nutrition and meal preparation. What she did not mention was that she was not making food for herself. Riley measured carefully, mixing protein powder with grain paste and adding mineral supplements she had researched in the academy library. Arcturian drakes needed calcium, iron, and certain amino acids. The standard nutrition blocks provided bare minimums. These treats she was making would give proper nourishment, the kind a growing dragon needed. She shaped the mixture into small bars and baked them on low heat. The smell was not particularly appealing to human senses, but she had formulated them for Drake taste preferences. When they cooled, she wrapped them carefully and tucked them in her jacket pocket. The walk to the creature yards felt longer than usual. Doubt crept in her mind with each step. What if the dragon rejected her offering? What if someone caught her and accused her of wasting resources? What if she was being stupid, trying to befriend an animal everyone said was defective? But Riley remembered the way the white drake had looked at her 3 nights ago. Really looked with intelligence and awareness in those pale eyes. He was not defective. He was starving and lonely, and everyone had given up on him. She knew how that felt. The yards were mostly empty at this hour. A few cadets tended to their bonded creatures in the distance, but no one paid attention to Riley. She approached the pen where the albino drake lay curled in his usual corner. He lifted his head when she got close, and she saw recognition in his gaze. "Hey," Riley said softly, kneeling outside the barrier. "I came back like I promised." The dragon watched her but did not move. His body language showed caution, not aggression. His tail remained still, his wings stayed folded. Waiting, Riley pulled out one of the treats she had made. It was still slightly warm. "I made this for you," she said, holding it where he could see. "I researched what you need. It's not much, but it's better than those awful blocks they give you." She knew he could not understand her words, but tone mattered. She had learned that on the farm. Animals responded to gentleness, to patience, to respect. She placed the treat on the ground near the barrier and then backed away several steps. "You don't have to trust me yet," Riley continued, her voice steady and calm. "I just thought you might be hungry. Would you like it?" The white dragon stared at the treat, then at Riley, then back at the treat. Several long moments passed. Riley stayed perfectly still, not pushing, not expecting, just offering. Finally, the drake uncurled himself and stood. He was larger than Riley had realized, even malnourished. His movements were stiff, whether from hunger or caution, she could not tell. He approached the treat slowly, sniffed it carefully, and then looked at Riley one more time. She smiled encouragingly but did not move closer. The dragon took a small, tentative bite. His eyes widened. He took another bite, then another, until the entire treat was gone. When he finished, he sat back on his haunches and made a low sound, almost like a rumble deep in his chest. It was not threatening. It sounded almost like a purr. "You liked it," Riley whispered, delighted. "I'm glad." The drake tilted his head, studying her with new interest. Up close, even in the dim light, Riley could see that his scales had an almost translucent quality. They caught the light strangely, creating faint rainbow glimmers along his neck and wings. He was not ugly. He was beautiful in a different way than the other drakes. "My name is Riley," she said, knowing he would not understand but wanted to talk to him anyway. "I'm new here. I don't really fit in either. Everyone thinks I'm too small, too young, too quiet. Maybe we're both the wrong shape for this place." The dragon made another soft sound, and Riley could have sworn he looked sympathetic. "I'll come back tomorrow," she promised, standing slowly so as not to startle him. "I'll bring more treats. And maybe we can just sit together for a while? You don't have to be alone all the time." She turned to leave, but paused when she heard a shuffling sound. The white drake had moved closer to the barrier, as close as he could get without touching the energy field. He was watching her with those intelligent pale eyes, and his tail moved in what might have been a small wave that Riley's heart swelled. "Tomorrow," she repeated. "I promise." As she walked away, she felt lighter than she had since arriving at the academy. Behind her, the white dragon settled back into his corner, but this time he was not curled into a defensive ball. He sat upright, alert, watching the direction she had gone. For the first time in 4 months, Frost felt something other than hunger. Someone had asked him, not commanded. Had offered, not demanded. Had shown him kindness without expecting anything in return. The small human child with the serious eyes had seen him, truly seen him, and not turned away in disgust. He would wait for her return. And this time, waiting to not feel quite so lonely. 2 weeks passed, and Riley visited Frost every evening. She brought treats made with increasing care and variety, learning which flavors he preferred and which nutrients helped his scales regain their shine. She talked to him about her classes, her loneliness, her memories of home. Frost listened to everything, his pale eyes tracking her movements, his posture gradually relaxing in her presence. The changes in Frost were becoming impossible to ignore. His ribs no longer showed through his sides. His scales developed a lustrous quality, catching light like pearls. His movements grew stronger and more confident. Even his size seemed to increase, as if proper nutrition had unlocked growth that starvation had stunted. Dr. Yenna, the Academy's creature specialist, noticed during her weekly inspections. She was a slender woman with kind eyes and hands that moved gently when examining animals. She studied Frost carefully, then looked at Riley, who was sitting outside the pen as usual. "You've been feeding him," Dr. Yenna said. It was not an accusation, just an observation. Riley tensed, afraid she was in trouble. "Yes, ma'am. Just treats. I researched proper drake nutrition and made them myself. I didn't steal anything from Academy stores." Dr. Yenna smiled slightly. "I can see that. His condition has improved more in 2 weeks than in the previous 4 months. You're doing something right." She paused, considering. "Have you thought about bonding with him?" Riley's heart jumped. "I didn't think I was allowed. I'm only 10, and everyone says he's defective." The Academy regulations allowed junior cadets to bond if both creature and child consent, Dr. Yenna said. "As for defective, I think we can both see that assessment was wrong. This drake is intelligent and responsive. He was neglected, not broken." Hope flared in Riley's chest, but fear came with it. What would bonding mean? Training together. Combat trials in 6 weeks. If you pass, you become full partners. If you fail, you both face reassignment. Dr. Yenna's expression grew serious. "It won't be easy. Other cadets have been training for months. You'd be starting from nothing, and people will doubt you both." Riley looked at Frost. The white drake was watching their conversation intently, as if he understood the weight of it. Can I think about it? Of course. But Riley, whatever you decide, keep feeding him. Keep visiting. What you're doing matters. That evening, Riley sat closer to the barrier than usual. Frost had been allowing her nearer each night. Until now, she could almost touch his scales through the energy field. She pulled out a treat and offered it, and he took it gently from her hand, careful not to nick her fingers with his teeth. Dr. Yena says we could bond, Riley said quietly. That means training and trials, and probably failing in front of everyone. They already laugh at me. They'll laugh harder if I fail with you. And you might get hurt in the trials. Frost made a low sound, almost questioning. But I don't care what they think anymore, Riley continued, her voice growing stronger. I know you're not defective. I know you're smart and strong and just needed someone to see it. So if you want to try, I want to try too. The white drake stood and moved to the barrier. He pressed his snout against the energy field as close to Riley as physics allowed. His pale eyes held hers, and in them she saw determination that matched her own. I'll take that as a yes, Riley whispered. The formal bonding request took 3 days to process. Instructor Halveen called Riley to his office, clearly skeptical. You understand that bonded pairs must pass combat trials? That failure could result in injury or permanent separation? Yes, sir. And you still want to bond with the albino drake? His name is Frost, sir. And yes, I do. Halveen studied her for a long moment. Very well. The bonding ceremony is tomorrow at dawn. After that, you'll have 6 weeks to prepare for trials. I hope you know what you're doing, Cadet Shin. The ceremony was small and formal. Riley stood in the bonding chamber with Frost beside her, no longer separated by barriers. Up close, he was magnificent. His scales gleamed white with hints of blue and silver. He stood tall, his head level with Riley's shoulder. The bonding instructor, an elderly woman who had performed hundreds of these ceremonies, placed Riley's hand on Frost's neck and spoke the traditional words. Do you, Riley Chun, accept the bond of partnership, trust, and mutual protection with this creature? I do, Riley said firmly. And does the creature accept? Frost lowered his head and touched his snout gently to Riley's forehead. The traditional Arcturian gesture of acceptance. Then the bond snapped into place. Riley gasped as Frost's consciousness brushed against hers. It was not words or images, but feelings and impressions. She felt his fierce intelligence, his loyalty, his determination to prove everyone wrong. She felt the depth of gratitude for the simple kindness she had shown. And underneath it all, she felt his strength, vast and untapped, waiting to be unlocked. Frost felt Riley's unwavering belief in him, her courage despite her small size, her compassion that had saved him from despair. He felt her loneliness transform into purpose. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that he would do anything to be worthy of her faith in him. When the bond settled, they both staggered slightly, overwhelmed by the connection. But Riley was smiling, and Frost's tail was actually wagging for the first time since he had arrived at the academy. Well, the bonding instructor said, looking surprised and pleased. That's one of the strongest initial bonds I've seen in years. Now comes the hard part. You have 6 weeks to be ready. Riley looked up at Frost, and through their new bond, she felt his confidence flowing into her. We'll be ready, she said. They left the bonding chamber together, Riley walking beside Frost rather than leading him. Already, cadets were staring. Brennan stood near the training yards with his crimson drake, his expression dark with contempt. Look at that, he said loudly. The runt cadet and the ghost drake. This should be entertaining to watch fail. Other cadets laughed, but Riley kept walking. Through the bond, she felt Frost's anger at the insult, but also his control. He would not give them the satisfaction of a reaction. Neither would she. They had 6 weeks to prove everyone wrong. And now, bonded together, neither of them was alone anymore. Training began before sunrise. Riley and Frost had the practice grounds to themselves at this hour, which was good because their first attempts at coordinated flight were disasters. Frost's wings were stronger now, but months of malnutrition had left him uncertain of his own abilities. Riley had never flown on anything before and kept sliding sideways when Frost banked. They crashed into the practice dirt 3 times in the first morning alone. Again, Riley said, spitting out dust and checking Frost for injuries. Through their bond, she felt his frustration matching her own, but also his determination. They got up. They tried again. Doctor Yenna arrived during their second week, carrying equipment and data pads. I'm here to help, she said simply. Not officially, but I have morning hours free. If you want guidance, I'm offering. Riley nearly cried with relief. Yes, please. We keep falling. You're trying to fly like the other pairs, Dr. Yenna observed, watching them attempt another maneuver. Stop that. You're not them. Frost is built differently than other drakes. His lighter bone structure makes him more agile, but less stable in straight flight. And you're smaller than standard cadets, which means less weight but different balance points. She spent the next hour showing them how to work with their differences instead of against them. How Riley's small size let her shift position quickly to help Frost turn. How Frost's agility could substitute for raw power if they planned movements together. Other pairs use command structures, Dr. Yenna explained. The cadet orders, the creature obeys. You have something different. Use it. Your bond lets you feel each other's intentions. That's faster than any verbal command if you learn to trust it. Riley and Frost practiced feeling instead of thinking. When Frost banked left, Riley felt it through their bond a split second before it happened and adjusted her weight naturally. When Riley wanted to descend, she thought the intention and Frost understood without words. Slowly, clumsily, they began moving as one unit. The other cadets noticed their early morning sessions. Some watched with curiosity. Most watched with amusement. Brennan made a point of bringing his combat class to the practice grounds during Riley and Frost's training time, deliberately showing off his drake's superior size and power. That's pathetic, Brennan called out after Frost and Riley completed a basic barrel roll that other pairs had mastered weeks ago. My grandmother could fly better than that, and she's been dead for 10 years. His friends laughed. Riley felt heat rise in her face, felt Frost's anger through the bond. But she also felt something else. Brennan's drake, Blaze, was responding to verbal commands with tiny delays. Every order required processing time. She and Frost were slower now, but their communication had no delay at all. Eventually, that might matter. Ignore them, she murmured to Frost. We're getting better. That's what counts. 3 weeks in, Frost injured his wing during an aggressive turn. Nothing serious, but Dr. Yenna ordered 3 days of rest. Those 3 days felt like forever. Riley sat with Frost in his new quarters in the bonded creature halls, studying tactical manuals while he healed. The trials have 3 parts, she read aloud. Aerial maneuvers, tactical coordination, and combat effectiveness. We're okay at maneuvers now. But combat. She looked at Frost worriedly. I don't want you to get hurt. Through the bond, Frost sent back feelings of protectiveness. He did not want her hurt either. But they both understood that the trials would test them against other pairs, some of which were much larger and more experienced. We need strategy, Riley decided. We can't match them in strength, so we need to be smarter. She spent the rest days analyzing recordings of past trials, noting patterns and weaknesses. She saw how larger drakes tired quickly after big attacks. How some pairs had poor coordination on defense because they relied too heavily on offense. How almost everyone prioritized power over precision. When Frost's wing healed, their training changed. Instead of trying to match what other pairs could do, they focused on what only they could do. Quick direction changes, tight spiral climbs, defensive maneuvers that used Frost's agility. Riley learned to move on Frost's back like a dancer, maintaining perfect balance even during complex aerial moves. Dr. Yenna brought them a surprise in week 4. I borrowed this from the advanced tactical program, she said, activating a portable drone system. It'll simulate combat scenarios. Start with level 1 and work up. The drones attack from random angles, testing reaction time and coordination. At first, Riley and Frost struggled badly, but their bond gave them an advantage. Riley could feel threats Frost sensed behind them. Frost could react to tactical decisions Riley made before she voiced them. They failed dozens of times, but each failure taught them something. By week 5, they were clearing level 3 scenarios that some senior pairs struggled with. Their scores were not the highest, but their coordination was becoming seamless. They moved like water, flowing around obstacles instead of smashing through them. Other cadets stopped laughing quite so loud. A few younger students started watching their training sessions with genuine interest. Brennan's mockery became more forced, more aggressive, as if he sensed something changing. The final week before trials, instructor Halveen observed their practice. He watched in silence as Riley and Frost completed an advanced aerial course, not the fastest but with 0 errors. When they landed, he approached with an unreadable expression. "You've improved," he said carefully. "More than I expected. But the trials are not practice drills. Real combat against real pairs. Are you prepared for that?" Riley met his eyes steadily. "We're as ready as we can be, sir." Halveen looked at Frost, who stood calmly beside Riley, his white scales gleaming with health and proper care. "I misjudged this Drake," the instructor admitted quietly. "I thought his coloring made him weak. I was wrong. Don't make me wrong about you too, Cadet Chun." "We won't, sir." The night before trials, Riley could not sleep. She sat with Frost in his quarters, her hand resting on his neck, feeling his steady heartbeat through their bond. Tomorrow they would face 20 other pairs, many of them older, bigger, more experienced. They would be judged and probably found wanting. They might fail spectacularly, but they would face it together. "I'm scared," Riley admitted in a whisper. "Not of failing the trials, of letting you down, of not being good enough for you." Frost made a deep rumbling sound and wrapped one wing around her gently. Through their bond came absolute certainty. She was more than good enough. She had saved him when no one else cared. She had seen worth where everyone else saw defect. Whatever happened tomorrow, they were partners. That would never change. Riley leaned against Frost's warm scales and finally fell asleep. Tomorrow would test everything they had built together. But tonight, they had each other, and that was enough. The arena was packed with spectators. Every instructor, every cadet, every staff member had come to watch the combat trials. 20 bonded pairs would compete today, demonstrating the skills that would determine their future assignments and rankings. Riley and Frost were scheduled last, the traditional position for those expected to provide entertainment through failure. Riley sat in the waiting area with Frost beside her, watching the early pairs perform. Her hands shook slightly, but through the bond, Frost sent calm confidence. They had trained hard. They knew what they could do. The opinions of the crowd did not matter. The first pair completed the aerial course in impressive time, but clipped 2 obstacles. The second pair had perfect form, but moved sluggishly. One by one, the pairs demonstrated competence, occasionally excellence, but nothing exceptional. The crowd applauded politely, instructors marked scores, and the trials continued. Then Brennan and Blaze took the arena. The Crimson Drake was magnificent in the bright lights, his scales gleaming like rubies. He was easily twice Frost's size, with massive wings and powerful muscles. Brennan sat on his back with practiced confidence, wearing his uniform like armor. They attacked the aerial course with brutal efficiency, powering through obstacles rather than avoiding them. Their time was the fastest yet. The crowd roared approval. Brennan smirked as he landed, accepting congratulations from other cadets. His eyes found Riley in the waiting area, and his expression turned mocking. She looked away, focusing on her breathing. "Next pair," the announcer called. Cadet Riley Chun and bonded partner Frost. The crowd's applause was scattered and half-hearted. Riley heard someone laugh. Another person made a comment about this being the comedy portion of the trials. She felt Frost tense beside her, felt his anger through the bond. "Easy," she murmured, placing her hand on his neck. "Let them laugh now. We'll show them something different." They entered the arena together. The bright lights made Frost's white scales almost glow. He was smaller than most drakes, but perfectly proportioned now, his body lean and strong from weeks of proper nutrition and training. Riley mounted carefully, settling into the position they had practiced hundreds of times. The aerial course appeared before them, holographic obstacles and marked waypoints suspended in the air. It was designed to test speed, precision, and control. Most pairs focused on speed. Riley and Frost had a different plan. The starting signal sounded. Frost launched smoothly, his wings catching air with practiced ease. Where Blaze had powered through the course, Frost flowed through it. Each turn was precise, each maneuver calculated. Riley shifted her weight in perfect sync with his movements, their bond allowing split-second adjustments that looked effortless. They were not the fastest, but they moved with a grace that made other pairs look clumsy by comparison. .0 obstacles touched. Perfect form. Average time. The crowd's laughter faded into confused murmurs. That was not the disaster they had expected. Instructors leaned forward, suddenly paying attention. In the competitor area, Brennan's smirk faltered slightly. The second trial was tactical coordination. Automated drones would attack from multiple angles while the bonded pair defended and countered. It tested reaction time, communication, and strategic thinking. Most pairs handled it adequately. A few struggled with the unpredictable attack patterns. Riley and Frost approached it like a dance they had practiced until it lived in their muscles and bones. Riley did not need to shout commands. Frost felt her tactical awareness through the bond, understood her strategies before she voiced them. When drones attacked from behind, Riley sensed them through Frost's perception and called evasive maneuvers that Frost executed instantly. When opportunities for counterattack appeared, Frost felt Riley's recognition and struck precisely. They moved as one being with two bodies. What took other pairs verbal communication and processing time happened between them in the space of heartbeats. Their score placed them in the top 5, higher than pairs who had trained for months longer. The crowd was no longer laughing. They were watching intently, trying to understand what made this unlikely pair so perfectly synchronized. Instructor Halvine stood at the judges' table with an expression of genuine surprise. The final trial was combat effectiveness. Bonded pairs would face each other in controlled matches, testing their ability to work together under pressure. Matches were randomized to ensure fairness. The computer selected opponents, Riley Chun and Frost versus Brennan Core and Blaze. The crowd erupted in excited chatter. This was the matchup everyone wanted to see. The runt Cadet and Ghost Drake against the predicted top scorer and his powerful Crimson partner. Brennan was grinning as he mounted Blaze, confident in the easy victory ahead. Riley felt fear spike through her chest, but Frost sent back steady determination through the bond. They had watched Brennan fight. They knew his patterns. They had a chance if they were smart. The match began. Blaze attacked immediately, launching a stream of fire that would have ended the fight instantly if it connected. But Frost was already moving, banking hard left with Riley perfectly balanced on his back. The flame missed by inches. Blaze followed up with a physical rush, trying to use superior size to overwhelm them. Frost dove instead of meeting the charge, slipping under Blaze's attack. Riley felt the wind from the larger Drake's wings as they narrowly avoided collision. Brennan was shouting commands, his voice sharp with frustration. Each command took time to process, time for Blaze to understand and obey. Riley and Frost had no such delays. Riley thought, and Frost moved. When she spotted an opening, he was already exploiting it. When he sensed danger, she was already shifting to help him evade. They could not match Blaze's power, so they did not try. Instead, they frustrated him, staying just out of reach, forcing him to expend energy on attacks that never landed. Brennan grew angrier, his commands becoming harsher. Blaze responded to the aggression in his rider's voice, becoming more reckless. Now, Riley thought, and Frost understood, as Blaze committed to another massive flame attack. Frost circled behind him. The moment Blaze had to pause to recover from the energy expenditure, Frost struck with his ice breath, not at Blaze directly, but at the arena floor beneath him. Ice spread rapidly, creating a slick surface. Blaze's landing became a skid. He struggled for balance, wings flaring awkwardly. Before Brennan could compensate, Frost was there, using his smaller size and agility to pin Blaze's wing to the icy ground. Not hurting him, not burning or clawing, just controlling him, demonstrating superior technique over superior strength. The match was over. Silence filled the arena for 3 full seconds. Then the crowd exploded into shocked noise. Cadets were shouting, instructors were standing, everyone was talking at once. Riley and Frost had just defeated the predicted champion using nothing but coordination, strategy, and trust. Brennan sat frozen on Blaze's back, his face red with humiliation and fury. He dismounted roughly and stalked away without acknowledging Riley or following proper post-match protocol. Blaze stood slowly, shaking eyes from his scales, looking confused about how he had lost. Riley slid off Frost's back on shaking legs and threw her arms around his neck. Through their bond came pure joy, pride, and relief. They had done it. They had proven everyone wrong. Instructor Halveen approached slowly, his expression carefully neutral. That was remarkable coordination, Cadet Chun. I have not seen bonding chemistry like that in years. He paused. Final scores will be announced this evening. But regardless of your ranking, you both performed well beyond expectations. As they left the arena, other cadets stared with new respect. A few younger students applauded. Riley kept her hand on Frost's neck, feeling his heart beating strong and steady, feeling the bond between them thrumming with shared accomplishment. They had faced the trials together and emerged stronger. And this was only the beginning. The announcement came during evening assembly. All cadets and bonded creatures gathered in the main hall while instructor Halveen read the trial results. Riley stood with Frost near the back, trying to stay calm despite her racing heart. They had won their match, but final rankings considered all 3 trials combined. 20th place, Cadet Morris and Rex. Halveen began, working his way up the list. Each name was met with polite applause. Some cadets looked disappointed, others relieved. The tension built as higher positions were announced. 4th place, Cadet Brennan Core and Blaze. A shocked murmur rippled through the crowd. Brennan, who had been predicted to take first, stood rigid with barely controlled anger. His jaw was clenched so tight, Riley could see muscles jumping in his cheek. 4th was respectable, but for someone who had publicly mocked others, it was a humiliation. 3rd place, Halveen continued, and Riley felt Frost tense beside her. Cadet Riley, Chun, and Frost. For a moment, Riley was not sure she had heard correctly. 3rd place, out of 20 pairs, higher than cadets who had trained for years, higher than Brennan and his powerful Crimson Drake. The applause was genuine this time, mixed with surprise chatter. Riley felt tears prick her eyes but blinked them back. Through the bond, Frost sent waves of fierce pride and satisfaction. They had done more than survive. They had excelled. After assembly, things changed rapidly. Frost was moved from his standard bonded creature quarters to the advanced partner halls, where high-performing pairs received better facilities. His new space was larger, warmer, with comfortable resting areas and access to premium nutrition. The contrast to his old pen in the neglected yards was almost painful to remember. Other cadets approached Riley with questions about her training methods, about how she and Frost coordinated so seamlessly. A few offered genuine congratulations. Others clearly struggled with jealousy, but could not deny what they had witnessed in the trials. Dr. Yenna found Riley in the creature halls that evening. I told you that you were doing something right, she said with a warm smile. You've proven that bond quality matters more than creature pedigree or cadet size. The Academy Council wants me to write a formal report on your training approach. Will it help other creatures who are considered unsuitable? Riley asked hopefully. It already is. 3 drakes in the yards who were scheduled for return of breeders are getting second evaluation. If they can bond successfully, they'll be given real chances. Dr. Yenna placed a hand on Riley's shoulder. You did not just save Frost. You changed policy. That matters. Riley visited the yards one last time that week, looking at the pens where Frost had suffered alone. The space was empty now, already being converted for other purposes. It felt like a lifetime ago that she had first seen him there, starving and mocked. She remembered asking him a simple question. Do you want the treat I made? Such a small act of kindness. Such enormous consequences. Riley. She turned to find Brennan standing awkwardly nearby. He looked uncomfortable, his usual arrogance replaced by something that might be shame. Blaze waited behind him, the crimson drake looking subdued. "I wanted to apologize," Brennan said stiffly, "for the things I said about you and Frost, for calling him defective, for being cruel when you were just trying to help him." He paused, struggling with the words. "I thought strength meant dominance. I thought I had to control Blaze to be a good partner. Watching you in the trials, I realized I was wrong." Riley studied him carefully. The apology seemed genuine, even if it was difficult for him to voice. "Are you treating Blaze differently now?" "Trying to. It's hard to change, but I'm asking instead of ordering, listening instead of commanding. We're not as good at it as you and Frost, but we're working on it." Brennan met her eyes. "I'm sorry. For everything." "Apology accepted," Riley said quietly. "And Brennan? You and Blaze can be great together. You just have to trust him as much as he trusts you." After Brennan left, Riley joined Frost in his new quarters. He was sprawled comfortably on a padded resting platform, looking content and healthy. His white scales gleamed with an iridescent quality that became more pronounced each day. Proper nutrition had unlocked something in his coloring, making him shimmer with subtle rainbows in good light. He was not just healthy, he was magnificent. Riley settled against his side, feeling his warmth and the steady rhythm of his breathing. Through their bond, contentment flowed both ways. They had faced doubt, mockery, and incredible challenges. They had proven themselves not through size or power, but through trust and partnership. "The instructors want us to help train new bonded pairs next term," Riley told Frost. "They think we can teach coordination techniques. What do you think?" Frost rumbled approval, his tail moving in a lazy, happy wave. Teaching meant helping others find what they had found together. That seemed right. News of their success spread beyond the academy. Riley received a message from her parents on the farming colony, bursting with pride. Other academies inquired about their training methods. Arcturian drake breeders, who had routinely culled albino hatchlings as defective, began reconsidering. If an albino drake could bond this successfully, perform this well, perhaps the old prejudices were wrong. Months passed. Riley and Frost continued training, growing stronger together. Their bond deepened until sometimes Riley was not sure where her thoughts ended and Frost began. They moved together so naturally that observers often commented it looked like a single being in two bodies. Other young cadets started approaching Riley for advice. She helped where she could, always emphasizing the same principles: respect over dominance, partnership over control, kindness over force. Some cadets listened, others did not. But slowly, the culture at the academy began shifting. One evening, Riley sat with Frost on the observation deck, watching the sunset paint the sky in oranges and purples. It was the same time of day when she had first approached his pen, small and scared, carrying treats she had made with her own hands. "Do you remember being hungry all the time?" Riley asked softly. "Being alone in that corner?" Frost made a low sound, not quite sad but acknowledging. He remembered. The bond let Riley feel the edges of those memories, the gnawing emptiness, the loneliness, the slow loss of hope. But those memories were distant now, overshadowed by warmth and partnership and purpose. "I'm glad I asked instead of assuming," Riley said. "I'm glad I made you treats instead of just feeling sorry for you. I'm glad you said yes." Through the bond, Frost sent back everything he could not say in words. Gratitude deeper than language. Love beyond measure. The absolute certainty that finding her had saved his life in every way that mattered. Riley leaned against his neck, feeling his scales warm under her cheek. They had both been outcasts, dismissed by those who could not see their worth. Together, they had become something neither could have achieved alone, not because of power or dominance, but because one small human cadet had looked at a starving albino dragon and asked a simple question with genuine compassion: "Do you owe you on the treat I made?" That question had changed everything. It had built a bond that defied expectations. It had proven that true strength came not from force, but from the courage to show kindness when the world showed only cruelty. It had demonstrated that worth was not determined by appearance or prejudice, but by character and heart. Riley smiled as Frost shifted to shelter her from the evening wind with one wing. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new training, new opportunities to prove themselves. But tonight, they were simply Riley and Frost, partners and friends, no longer alone in the universe. And that was everything that mattered.